2 Kings 4, 1-17. Devotional focus verse. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. 2 Kings 4:10. It always began with a phone call to my husband Jerry. Sam, short for Samson or strong man, and her way of saying she had a need for someone with strong arms, could you stop by after school? Immediately my husband knew that Sister Miller would be having house guests, and there was furniture to be moved. Her home was not large, but it was always open to visiting ministers, evangelists, friends, relatives, those recuperating from illness or accident, a college student on Christmas break, or a recently reformed and released prisoner. My husband chuckles when he recalls one particular time. A family with several children came to sleep and eat there. At the same time, a youth group arrived from out of town for dinner on Sunday, and of course, the youths from our local church needed to eat with them. 22 places were necessary at the table. That meant putting an extra dining table into one of the bedrooms. Dutifully, Sam moved the twin beds to the basement so all the guests could be seated. One of my best friends from my early days as a Christian made her home with the Millers, so I too had been part of preparations at the Miller Hotel and Dining long before I became Mrs. Sampson. Recently, as my husband and I reminisced about Sister Miller's hospitality, neither of us could recall that she ever inferred in any way that having company was inconvenient, or that she was unhappy to serve any particular person. On a few occasions, she did say after the event that she was weary. However, we could tell it was a satisfied weary. She put as much love into cooking for the ravenous students as she would have for a visiting pastor. She wanted her home to be very clean, the beds to be comfortable, and the food to be healthy and plenteous. And there was always a quiet place with a Bible, a reading lamp, and a desk or other writing surface available for her guests. Sister Miller reminds me of the Shunammite woman in today's text, who recognized Elisha as God's prophet. This Shunammite was passing along a wonderful example, for the Bible encourages gracious hospitality. She was not seeking a reward, but was only concerned to help the prophet. And looking back, I can see that Sister Miller had that attitude also. Hospitality can be a contagious condition. My husband and I have discovered the blessing of sharing our home with others, especially those of the household of faith. Even though these guests may be recent acquaintances, they become part of our prayer network. God blessed the Shunammite woman, and He will also bless us if we seek to have hospitable hearts. Background information. The events of chapters 4-7 took place during the reign of Jehoram of the northern kingdom, but they are not necessarily recorded in chronological order. In verses 1-7 of today's text, one of the sons of the prophets had passed away, and his wife and sons owed a debt they could not pay. According to the law of Moses, debts could be paid by people selling themselves or their children to be servants until the year of Jubilee. See Leviticus 25:39-40. When this widow came to Elisha, the creditor was ready to force her sons to be slaves. The pot of oil was the family's only asset, and Elisha gave specific instructions. They were to borrow many containers. When they had collected the vessels, they were told to shut the door, and in the privacy of their home, God performed the miracle. The widow and her sons exemplified obedience and faith, and with the sale of the oil, they paid their debt and had money left for living expenses. The second incident, recorded in verses 8-17, took place in Shunem, a village of the tribe of Issachar. It overlooked the valley of Jezreel, with Mount Carmel approximately 15 miles to the west. The village was nearly midway between the prophet Elisha's home in Abel Meholah and Mount Carmel, where he went to pray and meditate. Consequently, Elisha was frequently in this area. The woman in this portion of text was prominent socially and enjoyed some wealth. She provided Elisha food when he passed through the town, and then perceived that a private room on the roof of her home would be helpful to him. Her generous hospitality was without selfish motivation, but she was rewarded in a way that was completely unexpected to her. She had a son even though her husband was aged. This is the first mention of Gehazi, Elisha's servant. It is possible that he filled the same role for Elisha as Elisha had for Elijah. Conclusion. God will bless us if we look for opportunities to offer kindness and hospitality to others.
Chapter 4. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house save a pot of oil. Then he said, Go, borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So she went from him, and shut the door upon her, and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go, sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was, that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold now, I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber, and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily, she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. And the woman conceived, and bare a son, at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life.